I think I'm going to magic edit this. Anyway, wrote an article about why most marketers are driving their budgets in reverse. And so I'm just going to talk about that a little bit and we will get to it. So I want to talk about why global predictive optimization is the only real route to getting to performance. So I was on my walk this morning, as I often do, I think, and I was thinking about local versus global optimization, the concept of optimizing a specific incrementalities, optimizing a specific silo versus optimizing the entire path, every channel together as a whole, which is what our OptiMeasure platform does. And I was thinking through what are the benefits of global versus local, what are the statistical aspects behind it, and just kind of thinking about that. And then I was also thinking about, from there, my thoughts led into predictive versus a reporting perspective. And it was really making me think that this sort of global predictive optimization path is what everyone needs to be doing, as opposed to a local reporting path. And I think when you start talking about what we're doing with OptiMeasure, and we're talking about things like Bayesian regression, and I think a lot of people, it just gets lost. And so I was trying to think of ways to talk about this that would really connect with people, make people understand what it is that I'm talking about when I'm talking about global predictive optimization versus local reporting. So something that most of us, at least in the US, do is drive long distances. We don't have good trains, but we're also far apart. And so imagine that you were going to plan a road trip. You have a friend who's moving from New York to San Francisco, multi-day drive, and you're planning this road trip. And what would you do? Well, I think most of us would go to our favorite Maps app, whether that's Google Maps or Waze, or I guess Apple Maps if you're within that part of the family. And you would say, this is where we're starting, this is where we're going, and it would give you a route and you would follow it. Optimizing that route. So the algorithms and how they do it, there's a lot of proprietary stuff there, but it looks at traffic patterns. It looks at construction zones. It looks at road closures. It considers things like seasonality and toll cost and fuel efficiency. And so when you're planning this route on some of these apps, it'll say this long, this route, this long, this. It'll give you some options. Here's the optimized route. Here's a few other routes from New York to San Francisco, and it's taking into account the pass that's closed because of snow in Colorado. You got to go around that, and it's taking into account not only what the traffic patterns are when you're crossing the Chicagoland area, but it's doing it for predictively when it expects you to do that. So if you're looking at the map and Chicago is 7 hours away, it's actually looking at what it predicts the traffic will be like 7 hours from now. At least they claim this. But you'll see this when you're driving, like the time kind of shifts with things up ahead of you. It's constantly readjusting that. And so it's using predictive historical patterns. It's giving you a global predictive plan for the entire journey. You're not looking at it as, you're not optimizing necessarily on a per segment basis. It's saying it's looking at everything, and the way it does, it's kind of interesting. But aside from that, it's giving you, this is the optimum path from A to B, and it's not optimizing the segment. So imagine if you were to plan a road trip the way that most marketing organizations run their budgets. So let's say local optimization would be Team A, your job is to get us from New York to DC. And so instead of planning one unified system, you're planning, you're organizing the trip into different teams to take care of each segment. So Team A is going to do New York to DC. Team B is going to do DC to Cincinnati. Team C is going to do Cincinnati to St. Louis. Team D is St. Louis to Denver. And then Team E is Denver to San Francisco. Each team has their own KPIs, their own incentives, their own definition of success. Team A, it's all about how quickly and cheaply you can get from New York to DC. And so Team A is coming back and saying, we optimized it. We shaved 18 minutes off the drive. The toll costs are down because we were able to do this cut across on a state route. And so we not only shaved off time, but we cut down tolls by 12%. We're doing amazing. And that sounds good, except that the optimal route from New York to San Francisco does not go through DC at all. And so Team A is optimizing a leg of the journey that just shouldn't exist period. They shouldn't be doing that. It's not helping us get to San Francisco. It actually is, so you're optimizing something that should be different already. So this looks like the ads team optimizing your branded search, and the social team is optimizing their retargeting, and the email team is optimizing their open rates. But they're all performing, and they're optimizing each part of that well in a silo. In this example, they might not be, but they're optimized. Let's say they're optimizing each segment well, but the total business performance might be flat. And it can be because you're optimizing the parts instead of the whole. And that's the statistical difference between like a local maxima, which is this leg of the trip is great, versus a global maximum, which is like the entire route is the best possible. And marketing today is full of just like these wrong turns that it's optimizing. Now so that's like global versus local. We want to say, what do we want for the business and what's the best way to get there, not what's the best way for each of our individual teams to look at each silo. So now I'm going to layer in a second problem, and this is reporting versus prediction. So we want global predictive, not local reporting. And so reporting versus prediction here, when we talk about the road trip here, let's call it driving in reverse. And so you're not just optimizing the wrong segment, but you're literally driving in reverse. You're going backwards, and you're steering the car based on what you see on the road behind you. Maybe you're looking in the rear view mirror, not out the windshield in front of you, or maybe you're literally facing backwards, going in reverse. So you're going in the direction from New York to DC, but you're doing it based on what you're looking that you've already gone through. So you are steering your car based on what you've done, relying then that reporting instead of prediction. So the reporting might say, the last mile on the Jersey Turnpike, it's been real straight. Let's keep on going. That might work when, you're on certain stretches of the Jersey Turnpike and it's pretty straight, but a few miles ahead or down the road, there's going to be a curve, there's going to be a construction zone, there's going to be a snowstorm, there's going to be a closed road, the traffic is going to increase. Reporting can't see any of that. It's blind to even the last time, like say seasonality, you drove the route. So if it's just seeing the last mile you drove and nothing else, it's blind not only to the past, your historical, this is what happened, but to the future. And so, I think about, seasonality. I think about like when I used to live up in Boston and we'd have to drive through New York down into Jersey to go home for Thanksgiving. And we knew it would be a nightmare drive at the time. Just getting out of Boston, getting onto the Mass Pike to get down could take hours with the traffic. And so we knew that was the case. But imagine if you had a system where it didn't know that. And so it's putting you into these parts where it's just not the most efficient way to go because it's not considering year over year seasonality. It's not considering those things. Now I know people adjust for that, right? So this is our busy season. We have a spike in orders in August, or we do really well during whatever season. Like absolutely. Like people already do that. They're manually adjusting for that seasonality, but deep optimization, data-driven optimization on it, they're generally not. But they are, obviously people are adjusting to it. But if you're going based on your report, even last year versus this year, you want that as a basis, but things change and other things are there. And so you want to have a predictive look. So the digital marketing equivalent for driving in reverse, it's saying, maybe outside that known seasonality, hey, our Google branded search did really well last week. Let's spend more there. Last month, our meta looked expensive, so let's cut spend a bit there. Our the curve, our diminishing curve based on last month's spend, let's just extrapolate it to this month. So marketers are steering based a lot of times on this rear view mirror instead of the windshield, and prediction is the windshield. Reporting is the rear view mirror. So you do need both, but one should guide your direction and the other should generally confirm it. So, I think global predictive optimization, it wins because you're answering a fundamentally different question. You're saying, what is the best total allocation across all our channels going forward, given what we know about our seasonality, diminishing returns, cross-channel interaction effects, what's the best total allocation across all channels? That's the question that gets you from New York to San Francisco, driving forwards, not this sub-siloed local reporting path. It incorporates, for marketing, it's going to incorporate cross-channel lift, diminishing curves, seasonality, future traffic like the upcoming holidays, the impact of one channel on another, the entire customer journey, the next month's predictive conditions. Local local optimization just can't do this. Reporting can't do this. So this is, the global predictive is cross-country optimized, and local reporting is optimizing to the wrong exit ramp. So what does it take to move from local to global? That's the question, right? So I think hopefully at this point, people, or even before this point, someone would listen to this and go, yes, safe, obviously that makes sense, but we can't because of X. So here's some of the things that you need, and some of these might be why you're not currently doing it. And, we can always talk about how to get around some of these things, but sometimes you're just screwed. But here's the things you need, and a lot of it is just people, it's not tech. So the first thing you need is you need to have organizational alignment. You need a unified destination. You have to have a shared definition of success. Usually this means good leadership saying, this is what we need. We need incremental revenue. We need incremental conversions. We need profitability. Whatever it is that you're looking for, you got to align on what is our global KPI. And then your internal teams, they can have KPIs under the global ones, but they have to align to that global one. So no more tribalism amongst channels, no more protecting your budget. Like, oh, well, we don't want to give the social team doesn't want to give up any of their budget to the ads team or whatever. Everyone has to be driving towards the same goal, not their favorite stop on the way. If you have a team that is like, says, fine, you want to optimize going to San Francisco, that's fine. We'll optimize our route to DC. That's a problem. They need to optimize to San Francisco. They need to have that understanding of the whole cross-country, cross-channel journey, and they've got to be open to it. And you've got to have a leadership organization that is not going to punish people for doing that, because if you have leaders that are going to if you feel like by giving up 10% of your budget from social to ads, the leadership team is going to make you lay off Susan, you might not be behind this. So if you have a leadership team that is not dealing this as a human problem and not protecting the team and encouraging the team and saying, you're not going to get punished, you're not going to lose your job if you help optimize for the journey, people aren't going to do it. So as a leader, you have to basically say, as an org, this is our goal. Everyone needs to optimize towards it, not your sub goal. And even if that means you're going to lose budget and reallocate budget, we are not punishing anybody, because everyone's going to work towards this goal. And if that means we have to move Susan from the social team to the ads team and do some retraining or whatever that means, like, we're doing this together and we're getting to San Francisco. You need to give that psychological safety as a leader. So really the organizational alignment part of it is just saying this is what we're doing and everyone needs to align to maximizing this, right? Not your subset, but this. And then also making sure people have that psychological safety that they're not going to lose their jobs if they do it. Otherwise, they're not going to do it, and you might not even know that they're not doing it. So number two, again, related, there's another mindset cultural shift, and that's a cultural change about trusting the forward view, right? You have to learn to trust causality over correlation, prediction over reporting, and systems level thinking over channel level wins. If you are focused on just not proving anything causally, not using any kind of statistics or math or data science or anything like this to try and determine, no regression modeling, nothing to do with figuring out there is a causality here. This is actually something that we can move and it'll affect, not just correlative, but something that we can actually make a change. And then doing that in a predictive manner, using that predictive causality, and then thinking of it from the systems perspective rather than their channel. That's part of this as well. So that cultural change is like, being okay. It's like, it's sometimes called putting on the company hat, right? It's about affecting change for your overarching business goal, not your subline, and doing it using causality and prediction. So if you have a team that you have saying, all right, this is our goal, everyone's goals have to align to it, no one's going to be punished for it, everyone needs to focus on causal stuff, not correlative, prediction over reporting, systems level over channel wins, but like, we're doing this the best way to get to San Francisco. You have those mind shift things. You have that cultural in effect. Then, and only then, does the technical infrastructure come into place? Because if you don't have the organizational alignment and the cultural change of those first parts, like, the technical won't matter. It's just a waste of money. It's just a waste of money. Like, you've got to have that stuff, that trust, and you've got to have that cultural change. So once you have the technical, once you're into part three, the technical infrastructure, you're going to need, the cross-channel data, historical granularity, seasonality, models to estimate your diminishing returns, the ability to measure those cross-channel interactions, again, like our OptiMeasure does, different statistical frameworks, Bayesian regression, there's different ones, and you've got to be able to use predictions, not just reconstructions. Otherwise, you're just, you're not going to get there. So we've got the organizational alignment, you've got the cultural change, you've now got the technical infrastructure. Now you got to drive it. Now you got to drive the route. Okay. And so you have to implement changes based on these predictions, not your level of comfort. Some people can feel like they're losing control. They're just doing what the data says and they don't feel comfortable. They're not comfortable. So you got to be comfortable implementing changes based on predictions. And so that means you got to listen to the data and you've got to shift your budgets. You've got to adjust your creative mix. You've got to reallocate across channels. You got to measure incrementality. You got to plan forward, not reacting backwards. And so that execution layer, that's where the rubber meets the road. That's where you're on the road to San Francisco at that point, and having that accountability to actually put that stuff into change. So the future is going to belong to these teams that are understanding that we have to look at this across the whole system, the whole journey, all the interactions, and the whole forward-looking picture and predictability. So if you're not focused on that, if you're not aligning with your organization, you're not championing that cultural change of causality and prediction and system level thinking, and you don't build a technical infrastructure, and then you don't actually do the uncomfortable thing, which is to take action based on those predictions and then continue to optimize and measure along the way, you're going to drift behind and you're going to take longer to get to your goals. And that means lowered efficiency, that means lowered incremental, whatever your goals are. So if you want to win, stop driving in reverse, stop optimizing the wrong turns, start using a global predictive map, and stop optimizing the little stuff, and you'll actually get to whatever your marketing San Francisco is. Oh, and I'm Saif Sharif with 3 Bears Data, and our product OptiMeasure at optimeasure.io obviously is a tool that can help do some of this.